How do you decide what's right and wrong? We are going to think about that today on Now What Devotions from Trinity Lutheran in Cyrus. I have a lot of good memories of, Play-Doh, but also just making crafts and doing stuff in Sunday school when I was a kid. And I remember the teachers were kind to me and they were patient with me. They would talk to me at church and just make me feel like I was somebody who was important there, who mattered. And today we are in the book of Matthew, and we are thinking a little bit about the Ten Commandments, but also thinking about what is the role of the church in the world. And those two things are critically intertwined and must not be separated, which is what Jesus tells us today. So as I said, we are in Matthew, it's chapter 5, and Jesus is just, it's the Sermon on the Mount. He has just laid out the Beatitudes. And one of the things about those Beatitudes, he says, blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who grieve, blessed are those who desire mercy. And then he describes, the people who are doing that work, the peacemakers and those who are being faithful and those who are reviled. And he just goes down this list. But one of the things he's doing there is also describing how the world is. There are the poor. There are the rich. There are the meek, and there are those who have what they need. There are those who grieve and those who are joyful. There are those who have more than everyone else and power and control, and they scorn others, and there are those who are scorned. That's true. And he says, but all of those folks are blessed. And especially those who don't have what they need, God is going to bless. And then he goes on to the next step, and that's where we start today. We're in chapter 5. It starts at verse 13, and he says, you, and he says, you all, like plural, you all are to be salt. Salt and season God's kingdom, the flavor and the ways of God's kingdom into the world. And if salt loses its flavor, what would you even use it for? And you are to be like a light on a hill to show everybody another way. He says, show everybody another way, to be what the world needs. And what does the world need? And he's very clear about that. It needs blessing for the poor. It needs God's kingdom to come down. It needs mercy for those who need mercy. It needs comfort for those who have grief. And it will take people doing that work. But also, do not think, and he says this next, do not think I have come to do away with God's law. Not a word of it will pass away. No, I have come to fulfill God's law. Which means a part of our job as the church is to think really hard about what is wrong and what is right, and to do that in the context of loving folks who agree or disagree, who have a lot or who have a little, who follow all the rules or who don't. And that is hard, friends. I've used some images of Sunday school here because that is a place where I think we have a lot of experience. We have a lot of experience about working with our kids and thinking about what is right and wrong, how to treat one another, how to love one another. And of course, we do that all in the context of how we love them. We show them patience by being patient. We show them love by being loving. And we show them justice by having rules and boundaries. And that's something I wanted to think about with you all this week, too. Right now in our national conversation and our personal conversations and our conversation here at the church, I hear from a lot of you all kinds of different things, a lot of concerns. But one of the things I don't see as much, and I would encourage you to think about, how do we discern what lines up with God's law and God's commandments and with Jesus and his love? So for instance, one of the jobs of a Christian, being salt, is to name when something is wrong without hating the ones that one disagrees with. Or to name when something is right, but not necessarily say that I support all the things that you support. There is this thing that we do of walking in the midst of people who have worldly concerns and we continue to hold on to other worldly concerns. We prioritize love, but we acknowledge that thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's stuff or your neighbor's relationships and people. You should honor your father and mother, right? You should definitely not have idols and not take the name of your Lord God in vain and keep the Sabbath holy. Why? Because God is God and that stuff ain't changing. So how do we navigate that? Well, the first thing we do is we remember that the law, the truth, the way, the life, all runs through a person, which is precisely actually what we do at Sunday school all the time. Sunday school is always taught by a teacher, someone who volunteered, someone who cares, someone who's doing their best, and someone who isn't perfect. And we have preachers like me, someone who does his best, tries to care, tries to be honest, but is human. And then we have a community where the Spirit shows up and people do their best and try to love one each other, and it's imperfect. That's your thought for this week. How do we decide what is right and wrong? Well, first, God's law. Second, Jesus. Or actually, probably first, Jesus. Second, God's law. And then third, community and relationship over time with God and with one another. I'm Pastor Chris from Trinity Lutheran in Cyrus, signing off for now. Bye-bye.